Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission recently released a survey report which shows that Nigeria recorded a total investment commitment of $73.08 billion in various sectors of the economy between January and September this year. The investment commitments indicated that investors were willing to invest in 11 sectors of the economy. I'm now being joined by the Executive Secretary, NIPC, Yewande Sadiku, from our studios at the NSC. Good afternoon, Yewande. Thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
So could you give us a summary of your recent report of investment commitment into the country?
Okay. First of all, I prefer to refer to it as a report of investment announcements. We have a newsletter that goes out 6 days a week. And that newsletter calls investment-related news on Nigeria from different sources. It refers to the investment announcements that have been made in relation to any sector in Nigeria. So we track that information, we collect it, and we aggregate it. And this report is the third one that we've produced this year. We've been producing the report every quarter since January this year. The object of the report is to give a sense of investor interest in Nigeria. They relate to announcements rather than commitments. We're also building the capacity to track these announcements as they graduate and develop to actual investments. So the report shows in total that from January to September, a total of $73.08 billion worth of investment commitments were made, investment announcements were made in Nigeria, much higher than the figure that we saw for the same period last year, when about $41.71 billion, was announced in relation to investments. The bulk of the commitments for this report come from the UAE. I believe France is the second highest country in terms of the commitments, and 20% of the commitments relate to, 20% of the announcements relates to announcements by Nigerians. The object of the report is not to focus, we don't have the capacity, we can focus only on foreign investments, but our object is to focus on all announcements, whether those announcements are made by Nigerians or are made by foreigners. So it's not a report, if you like, of foreign investor interest in Nigeria, but a report more of all investor interest in Nigeria.
So what would you say informed the decision of the investors of where they want to do business in Nigeria and, of course, which sector? Investors' decisions are shaped by a number of things. The first thing is the availability, if they need raw materials in a location. The second one is the reality of the business environment in that state. So the easier it is to do business in a state, the more likely you would expect investors to go to that state. But where there are natural resources that exist in a state, investors are interested in those natural resources, they focus more on the resources and the quality and quantum of them, than they do on the challenges in the state. But obviously, the easier it is to do business in a state, and the more available resources, human and natural, are, the more likely it is, that investors will go to that state. They also look at the prospects, for their business in the locations that they're going to. For this report, the FCT happens to have the highest value of investment announcements. And is there any interest in the troubled regions like the Northeast?
We didn't see as much interest in those regions in this report, no.
Okay. So what are the main concerns of these foreign investors when it comes to investing in Nigeria in perhaps those key sectors like mining, construction, and so on?
The first concern investors raise in relation to all sectors is the quality of government policy
and the certainty of those government policies. I mean, investors understand and expect that there are some difficulties associated with doing business in Nigeria. And in reality, they can plan for those difficult operating conditions. But the one that they've mentioned to us that makes it the most difficult for them to adjust, if they come in on the basis of a policy that says something and their changes, their flip-flops, the amendments to the policy, without giving them enough time to react in terms of their investment prospects. So the stability of the policy environment is by far, the one thing that investors look for the most.
All right, before I let you go, in all of these, what does it tell?
Can I answer your question?
Okay. Now, before I let you go, in all of these, what does it tell about the potentials and opportunities for FDI in Nigeria?
I think the report shows that investor interest in Nigeria remains strong, and we're delighted to see that. But for me, the report also sounds a note of caution. Because they relate to investment announcements, they demonstrate what is possible. It is now the responsibility of agencies like NIPC and all arms of government to help translate these announcements to actual investment. So they demonstrate the potential for the translation of Nigeria's prospects, to real investments, to real wealth, to real economic value.
All right, thank you very much for your time. Yewande Sadiku, the Executive Secretary, NIPC. And President